700 Marines are now on their way to Los Angeles.
Donald Trump has been elected president.
I'm sorry for your transgressions.
Across the country.
But it's a pattern now. We're seeing this happening on more and more campuses. Antifa showed up, full masked, black outfits.
Charlie Kirk was shot at an event on a college campus in Utah.
Charlie Kirk is dead.
Charlie Kirk was shot dead. Just Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk assassinated. The president
So flooded so point USA.
Clap.
Posted it just the deranged dude.
Girl, someone had to do it.
When I saw people celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk, something snapped inside me. I was furious, angry beyond measure. I'm an Italian living in China. The West, the civilization that taught the world about rights, compassion, and reason, was now celebrating the death of an innocent man in the name of blind tolerance and compassion. I was furious because humanity in the best country in the world was showing its real face. I used to complain about China, saying Chinese people always lie. Now, is this the Western counterpart? I was angry because I had lost faith in people. I felt betrayed by the Western humanity I believed in. I needed to understand what could cause such madness, why people from all walks of life, from different levels of education and professions, could cheer for the murder of a father, a husband, and call it justice. Were they all evil, or was something else twisting their perception? To live among people, again, I needed to believe the problem wasn't human nature itself. So I started investigating. What I found was a spiral of power, manipulation, and a kind of metaphorical virus engineered by politicians. As an outsider, let me show you what I found. I'm Italian. I've lived in China for almost 20 years. American domestic politics don't directly affect my daily life. But in a globalized world, what happens in the US doesn't stay there. It echoes through economies, media, and how people perceive anyone from the West. I have no personal stake in which party wins an election. My interest isn't economic, it's social and perceptual. Here in China, for 99% of people, a foreigner, a Laowai, is a single category. They don't distinguish between Germans, French, or Italians. They just see a Westerner. And the Western image is largely shaped by one country, the United States. The image projected by America becomes the image of the Western civilization. To put it simply, what America does defines how I'm seen here. After the assassination of Charlie Kirk and the political circus that followed, I started connecting the dots. There was no way all this madness, all this hatred was random. Something was feeding it. The protests, the outrage, the endless social media wars. It all felt like a virus, invisible but everywhere. And like every bacteriological weapon, this virus has engineers, spreaders, and carriers. Now I have all the pieces to show you the hidden mechanism behind this collapse, what I call the zombie effect. The zombie effect is the way language, media, and manipulation combine to turn ordinary people into blind activists. The zombie virus destroys your ability to see reality. It makes you act, not by your own will, but because false narrative and ideology have infected your brain. You literally become a puppet manipulated by the political narrative. First, I'll show you how the virus operates, then we'll draw its profile. How the virus spreads. A big part of the problem is that many people, especially students, live inside bubbles. Like, they're fed the same narratives over and over by left-leaning media, by social platforms, by professors and universities. Let's go back to those violent protesters. They're infected by the same virus that led to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. If you watch their interviews, something stands out. Almost none can explain why they call Trump or Kirk a fascist or a Nazi. Ask them for a quote, a single reason, and they stumble. They get angry, they repeat slogans, they often fall back to insults, incoherent answers, or outright contradictions, but they can't reason it out.
We don't want Charlie Kirk on our campus. We don't want fascists on our campus.
What is fascism?
Immigration!
I don't know. I'm not like a political scientist.
Like close to being a fascist, and then like.
Okay. How am I?
Sorry.
Let's go through this. How am I a fascist?
Dude, like
Can you name one thing I believe that's fascist?
you believe that like you on.
So what makes Trump a fascist?
Does things without I'm not really good into interviews stuff. He just does everything he wants, and not following laws, or he's a convicted felon, that's all I know.
They're not thinking, they're echoing, and that's the real danger. Most of these people live inside informational bubbles, echo chambers shaped by left-leaning media, filtered by social media algorithms, and reinforced by professors who all say the same thing. And soon, they lose the ability to question anything. Here's one example. Warren Smith. Like me, he taught communication and new media. He gave his students a simple assignment: film an interview on any topic. That's it. The video went viral. In it, a student reads J.K. Rowling's actual words for the first time and realizes the narrative he'd been told was false.
So these guys want to talk about J.K. Rowling? Is that so? What's going on with that? What do you want to know?
Do you still like her work despite her bigoted opinions?
What opinions are bigoted? We're going to treat this as a thought experiment. I'm not going to say what's right or wrong or what way to think. The whole point is to learn how to think, not what to think. Does she have bigoted opinions?
She has had a history of being extremely transphobic, I've heard.
Hey, you've heard. So what? Can you give me an example?
If you look at her Twitter, I could try and find
see
something.
If you can find.
She said, "Dress however you please, call yourself whatever you like, sleep with any consenting adult who will have you live your best life in peace and security, but force women out of their jobs for stating that sex is real."
So you find that bigoted?
It was deemed transphobic.
Do you find that transphobic yourself?
I don't really have an opinion on it, but I'm just going with what a lot of other people have said.
So let's pause it. Let's not go with what other people are saying. Let's try and learn how to critically think. So let's analyze the tweet ourselves. So that statement, do you see anything problematic?
Force women out of their jobs for stating that sex is real.
So when I hear that, I'm interpreting that as meaning if a woman says that, saying that there's a difference between men and female and then being attacked as transphobic, I think that's what she's saying by attacking someone for stating that sex is real. Is that transphobic to you?
No, stating that sex is real is not transphobic. It's just a fact of life.
And she's basically saying, like, I have nothing against someone being trans.
Exactly.
It's your life, but you just don't get to impose on my... Do you think it's fair that that she's being attacked by a large group of people? You said at the beginning of this conversation, you said, given the fact that J.K. Rowling is transphobic, how do you feel about Harry Potter? Now, retroactively looking at that statement, do you think that was the best way to phrase?
No, I feel like an idiot now.
It's okay though, but this is why we do this, to learn how to think.
In my class specifically, in our class, there's been quite a few people in there who have been saying like, "Oh, she's transphobic." There's 5 people saying it. It must be correct.
True.
Yeah.
The message that transpires from the video is clear. Don't believe what you've been told. Analyze the facts yourself. The university could not have someone exposing the truth when this goes against the narrative, so the teacher was immediately fired. 4 years of passionate teaching, gone overnight because the truth didn't fit the script. Warren's doing better now, outside the system that tried to silence him. So now we can sketch a profile of the virus that produces the zombie effect in many people who go full extreme on the left. For it to spread, 3 key roles are needed. 1. Virus engineers. 2. The spreaders of the virus. 3. The carriers. Virus engineers. These are the architects of false narratives, politicians, strategists, and media outlets that weaponize words. Their goal? To pull as many people as possible to their side, to win elections, or if they lose, to destabilize the government that follows. The virus they build is encoded in extreme language that triggers an instantaneous emotional reaction. Words like Nazi, white supremacist, racist, or stories like ICE separating children from their families, ignoring the fact that every criminal arrest, no matter the race, separates families. False stories from left-leaning news outlets are crafted to provoke a dramatic emotional reaction, the kind that pushes you to act. One example, reports claiming that children were handcuffed and used as bait to capture illegal immigrants. Every word is engineered to bypass logic and strike directly at the brain's emotional center. When you inject enough emotional poison into a culture, eventually someone unstable acts on it. When Democrats started calling Trump and his supporters fascists, I knew what was coming. Sooner or later, someone with a weak mind would believe he was saving humanity by killing the new Hitler. And that's exactly what happened. If someone like me could see that coming, do you really think the virus engineers didn't? The spreaders of the virus, these are the amplifiers, traditional media, social platforms, influencers, universities, they become the broadcast towers of the virus. Algorithms push whatever drives engagement, not truth. Echo chambers form. The messages are repeated, emphasized, an almost impenetrable bubble of narratives is formed. Decades ago, turning someone into an extremist could take years. Today, with social media, it takes months. That's how fast this virus spreads. My 84-year-old mother in Italy, she's never been to America, now believes Trump is a dictator. Why? Because the algorithm fed her the same narrative again and again. The more extreme the content, the higher the engagement. And the more engagement, the more money. That's why the virus is so hard to stop, because it's profitable. The virus doesn't just survive on outrage, it thrives on it. The carriers, the infected, the ones who absorb and spread the virus without realizing it, they're often the most vulnerable, and they come in 3 kinds. Young students eager to belong. When ideology offers them identity, purpose, and moral superiority, they grab it with both hands. Without critical thinking skills, they can be persuaded easily. They repeat what they hear, louder, angrier, prouder, until they believe it's their own idea. That's why Charlie Kirk spent so much time debating students to make them think again. And that's why so many were glad when he was killed. Then, there are the people too busy or too tired to dig deeper. They depend on headlines, memes, sound bites, and finally, there's the third group, the highly emotional with low IQ. They're the easiest to manipulate. These people represent the bedrock of the zombie army. They live in a fake reality built by others, people who flatter them for their bright minds. If real evidence threatens their reality, a house of cards without foundations, a brutal cognitive dissonance is triggered. Their mind can't handle it, so they react with anger, denial, and aggression. It's not always about intelligence. Smart people can be infected too. The virus works because it bypasses logic and hits emotions directly. It's about exposure. Watch 10 videos telling you the same story, and your brain begins to think it's truth. Watch 20, and you start feeling part of a movement. Watch 30, and suddenly you're ready to fight for it. That's how normal people turn into ideological soldiers. Zombies aren't evil by nature, they've been programmed. If you want to see who the virus engineers are, look at Chicago and Portland. Outside ICE facilities, so-called peaceful protesters attack federal agents trying to enforce the law. They call it justice. Democratic mayors order police to stand down.
In Chicago, sources telling Fox News police there were told to actually stand down on helping ICE agents who are in danger.
For 999, Chief of Patrol said all units clear out from there. We're not sending anybody over to that location. They were saying that they were being surrounded by that large crowd, and they were requesting the police were not sending.
Again, those are the orders we're being given.
Law and order ignored to protect ideology in a quest for power. In a normal world, police protect citizens. Here, they protect the narrative. Now you know who keeps the zombie army alive, and who wrote the code. The side effects of the virus: the more people get infected through misinformation and emotional manipulation, the more the left becomes represented by its loudest, least rational voices. Smart, moderate thinkers drift away, uncomfortable with the extremism. The louder the extremists get, the more they define the public image of the left. Under the zombie virus, dialogue collapses. Opponents aren't seen as people anymore, they're enemies. And when that happens, violence starts to feel normal. From my outsider perspective, if I had to describe the two American parties right now, the left is emotional, the right is rational. Left, driven by feelings. Right, driven by logic and common sense. When emotion replaces reason, truth is the first casualty. The path for a solution. To safeguard the nation, irrespective of whether the government is left-leaning or right-leaning, efforts should focus on two primary objectives. 1, immunizing the population against radicalization. 2, stopping the engineers of the zombie virus. If this is a virus, then the only real defense is immunity. Because you can't cure a society by shouting louder. You cure it by thinking clearer. Immunity begins with education, not political education, intellectual education. Teaching people to ask why before they react. Teaching children to analyze facts, not slogans, to recognize manipulation when they see it. Schools should protect young minds from political indoctrination. No teacher should turn a classroom into a campaign stage. Children should learn how to think, not what to think. Critical thinking is the vaccine. It means questioning everything, including the ideas you agree with. It means reading sources, comparing perspectives, spotting bias. It means learning that disagreement is not hatred. Because once people can think for themselves, the engineers of the virus lose their power, hold the engineers accountable. The only way to stop the engineers is to give the government tools to defend its officials from opposition attacks fueled by lies and incendiary language. Those tools must include laws. Freedom of speech is sacred, but freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences. There must be accountability for deliberate lies. For those who knowingly spread false information to incite violence or hatred, words have consequences. Words can be weapons. When you call someone a Nazi without proof, you're not debating, you're dehumanizing. And dehumanization is what comes right before violence. The government should make it clear, using words like these to label political opponents is no different from hiring a hitman. There must be consequences for those who use language as a trigger. But laws alone won't solve this. What we really need is culture, a culture of respect for truth and for institutions. You cannot have your way when the majority voted differently. It's essential to respect the office of the president, regardless of personal opinions about the individual holding it. The Democrats didn't just attack the man, they disrespected what the office of the president stands for. Respect for the process, even when your side loses. Because when the minority of the country refuses to accept the majority victory, that's not democracy. That's a slow-motion civil war. Democracy is a fragile balance. Majority rule with minority rights. The majority governs, but it must listen. The minority cooperates, but must stay free to speak. Break that balance, and the whole system collapses. Trump now represents the chief, democratically elected by your country. Let him do his job. If one disagrees with the current administration, the appropriate response is to present better ideas and engage in constructive dialogue. Resorting to sabotage or obstruction without offering viable alternatives undermines the democratic process and the nation's future. When you tear down the presidency just to hurt one man, you weaken the country itself. What the Democrats should do to regain trust. Showing that they're very effective saboteurs won't help Democrats gain many votes in the future. Yes, they're the best at destroying things and plans, but can they build something? This is the moment to show what they can do. Sit with opponents, talk, argue honestly, present better ideas, not louder insults. People are sick and tired of hearing evocative, emotional sentences that bring no tangible solutions to the table. They want leaders who solve problems, not performers of outrage. It's time to shift from partisan war to cooperation, to make decisions based on logic, not revenge. It's time to prioritize the country's well-being over individual or party interests. Call back your army of zombies. Protect your citizens, including the ICE agents who risk their lives every day. Conclusion. I don't have a personal stake in American politics. I'm an Italian living in China, just watching, trying to understand. It's about humanity. Because when I saw people cheering for Charlie Kirk's death, I thought I had lost faith in humankind. Now I realize I've only lost faith in half of it. The half that chooses rage over reason. The people who think independently, who question without hating, who can admit when they're wrong. Those people on both sides are the ones who can save the West. The West isn't just a place, it's a set of values, and among them, the belief that free people can disagree and still coexist. So here's my final message. As an outsider who still believes in Western values, stop turning politics into religion. Stop turning citizens into soldiers of ideology. If we can think freely and speak responsibly, the West can heal. Epilogue. Finding peace in understanding. When I started writing this story, I was angry. Angry at a world that cheers for death. Angry at people who don't think, who just repeat what they're told. For days I couldn't sleep. I imagined revenge, justice, punishment. But what I really wanted was peace. And peace doesn't come from silence or surrender. It comes from understanding. Understanding doesn't mean forgiving the unforgivable. It means seeing the disease before it spreads and refusing to become another carrier, because anger is contagious too. It feeds the same virus I've been trying to expose. I started writing to understand why people lose their minds to ideology. But along the way, I realized I was trying to save my own. Writing became a way to talk to myself, to take the noise outside and turn it into meaning, to turn rage into reason. And maybe somewhere someone else will watch this and recognize themselves in my anger, in my questions, in my search for clarity. Maybe that's how healing begins. Not with shouting, but with the courage to think.